Hey guys, our story today is Action Jackson by Jan Greenberg and Sandra Jordan. It is an AR story, level 5.2, quiz number 65164. In the afternoon, Jackson Pollock puts on his paint-splattered boots and walks across the yard. The wind blows in from Gardiner's Bay, bringing the scent of salt marshes and sea lavender. His eyes miss nothing. Sunlight on the tree branches, tangled stalks of blackberry bushes, beetles crawling underfoot. Caw, caw! The crow that he has tamed flies down and lands on his shoulder. His border collie Jip runs in circles, demanding a walk across the fields and down a country road to the wide sandy beach. But Jackson turns and keeps going. The gray, weathered barn used to be filled with rusty machinery, old fishing gear, and broken tools. Now it is his art studio, a place for painting. Some artists paint on a canvas with an easel or hang it on the wall. Not Jackson. He spreads his out like a sheet, smoothing it flat with his large hands. He wants his painting to be big, big as the sky out west where he grew up, flat as the marshland behind his house. Sunlight pokes through the cracks in the boards, and flies buzz in the dusty studio air. Sliding doors rattle on their frames, and he sits, silent, on the floor, staring at the blank canvas. Some artists cover the canvas with a base coat of white paint. Not Jackson. He wants the paint to soak into the surface, leaving bare patches peeking through the stains of color. Some painters use oil paint or watercolors. Not Jackson. He'll use ordinary house paint from the hardware store just to make his paintings. Some artists paint pictures of flowers or people or landscapes. Not Jackson. He expresses his thoughts and feelings directly on the canvas, calling it energy in motion made visible. And still he sits surrounded by the cans of enamel, brushes stiff with dried paint, knives, sticks, a spatula, and canvases, and waits. At last he stands. He chooses a stick and dips it into the can of syrupy paint. Slowly he circles the canvas, stepping around the edges, straddling the corners. Black lines form a tangled web, and now he chooses a brush. Working toward the middle, sprays of color, tan, teal, yellow, and white. An athlete with a paintbrush. He uses his whole entire body to make the painting. Layers build with each gesture, new colors emerging, blending, and disappearing into the wet surface. He swoops and leaps like a dancer, paint trailing from the brush that doesn't ever touch the canvas. I want to make a larger and larger line. I want to keep it going. Hours go by like minutes, and suddenly he feels exhausted, used up. His inspiration is gone. Things get in the way of the flow, like roots blocking a soil line. He puts down the brush and he goes into the house to help make supper. His mind is filled with thoughts about the wet painting back at the studio floor. The next afternoon, Jackson prowls around the canvas, studying his work, but he doesn't even pick up a brush. Instead, he walks the beach, past the sandy marshes and the tall spirenta grass that waves in the breeze. He spends hours sitting on a grassy dune watching the seagulls. In the barn, the layers of paint begin to dry. Almost a week passes before he dips a brush and begins his dance again. What is he thinking? Does he see the sunlit beach, the pattern of the waves, the interlacing branches of the trees, the lush summer grass outside his studio? I don't know where my pictures come from. They just come, and the paint flows. Like the Native American sand painters he saw when he was a boy out west, he moves around the canvas, coaxing the paint into loops and curves. On the floor, I am much more at ease. I can walk around it, work from all four sides, be in the painting. Fireworks splatter of rosy pink, twisting ropes of white, spangles of silver, a lavender glow where pink and blue-black meet. Jackson listens to jazz recordings in the evenings. He likes musicians who improvise, inventing their own melodies as they play. While he paints, the notes spin over and over in his memory, swish and swish again. The rhythm of the brush matches the rhythm of the music. If a penny fell out of his pocket, he would leave it there. If an insect lands in the wet paint, there it stays. Nails and tacks become part of the texture. He caresses the surface with sticky paint-stained hands. One, then two handprints across the canvas. His eyes move up and down, back and forth, with light steps. He follows the sweeps of his brush. He stops, and a pool of paint pauses. Paint, paint, and more paint, dripping, pouring, flinging. The painting has a life of its own. I try to let it come through. Again he stops. He climbs a ladder to look down at the whole canvas. Every muscle aches, but his eyes, his mind, and his heart know that the painting is finished. Some people will be shocked when they see what has been created. Some will be angry, some confused, some excited, and some filled with happiness they can hardly explain. But everyone will agree, Jackson Pollock is doing something original, painting in a way that no one has ever seen before. For the next few days, he and his wife Lee plant the vegetable garden. They drive into town in their Model A Ford. He digs clams in the beach. On the weekend, some friends drop by for a party. It will take at least another week for the thick paint to dry. Then Jackson and Lee will tack the canvas onto the studio wall. Jackson sits, silent, staring at the blank canvas spread on the floor of the barn, waiting. Soon he will dip his brush into a can of paint, lifting it high into the air to begin again. And here are a few pictures of Jackson when he was a child, when he was in another painting that someone else did. And this is one of his paintings. And here he is creating one of his paintings, and then another picture when he was younger. So, I want you to see what kind of wonderful pictures you can create. Send them to me.